This is a process of awakening, so welcome to the Clif School on Strategy and Tactics for Awakening Humans. What we're going to discuss today is the issue on YouTube because it affects so many people. It does not affect me. I'll be flat out on that. I've never depended on advertising revenue from YouTube. I've made some money on it. I could not even tell you right now exactly how much it was in the past year, except that I've had to do taxes. So, recently, and that hurts. Anyway, though, but you know, like Oscar Wilde says, I'm quite happy to pay taxes. I'd just be twice as happy to pay half as much. Anyway, so here we are. YouTube ran into a problem. It was apparently an existing emotional problem for YouTube and its advertisers. As a bubble was pinpricked by the Wall Street Journal with an article that may or may not be bogus. Doesn't matter if it's bogus. At this point, the damage has been done, and the end result is the loss of advertising revenue. Now, the way that this shapes up, we're going to sort of treat this like a War College situation briefing to tell you where everything is at the moment, and then we'll go ahead and discuss some of the strategies and tactics that are that are potentially available to you as an awakening human if you're caught up in this. This video is primarily for those people that are actually caught up in this and may have to react to it. So our strategy and tactics briefing begins with a brief discussion of where we're at and what's happening. And so we have YouTube up here. Can we see that? No, not a chance in hell. Okay. So YouTube has an advertising issue. The advertisers are trying to sell things. And whether it's a position, a product, an idea, whatever, just does not matter. The advertisers are trying to sell things. In the process of trying to sell things, these advertisers have submitted themselves to YouTube's algorithm, and the algorithm, in the advertiser's view, is sloppy. Now, we've also got to acknowledge a lot of the advertisers are sloppy. They don't, when they set up their ads, they don't set up exactly what they think they are, or what they should be setting up in terms of their limitations and constraints, because YouTube and Google allow you via negative selection to isolate and not associate with anything you want that you can find and clue into based on a keyword. So YouTube and Google, in that regard, both in the YouTube advertising platform and even Twitter, these are the ones I'm most familiar with. All three of these platforms allow you to, as an advertiser, disassociate from any level of language. So the onus is really on the advertisers. They could have done this all along and never bothered with any of these issues. If the advertisers were smart, they would employ really good radical linguists and go through and set up ad campaigns that were exclusionary and were targeted exactly to the people they were after. I did this. I was very successful at it. It's relatively easy. And these platforms, YouTube, Google, and Twitter, assist you in this, and that their software is very reasonably well designed. And so if you know what if you think about it, you don't even have to know what you're doing. You can do it as a novice. You can go through there and decide, no, I don't want my video associated with, any words around the quoted phrase white supremacy. I don't care where it comes up. I don't care if it's an academic discussion or if someone's touting it as a lifestyle. I don't want to be associated with it. It's that easy. So, it's not a problem. Anyway, so advertisers are trying to sell stuff. They ran into these word issues. The Wall Street Journal, being buttheads and basic dicks, decided they were going to use that to come on up and nail what they saw as a bubble that was supporting their hated enemy, the alt anything. Because they don't care if it's alt right, they don't care if it's alt left. If they don't control it, they don't want it around, okay? Basically, that's really what it amounts to. Wall Street Journal here will just read in any legacy media, any old mainstream media. Now, they think the way old mainstream media thinks, okay? These guys, so therefore, because they have been dependent upon advertising their entire existence, And because YouTube was not smart enough to come up with any other kind of a operating algorithm for their structure, operating mechanism, and so relied on the old print media paid advertising kind of an approach, we're in this particular, some people are in this particular problem. Okay, so the Wall Street Journal decides to pop this particular bubble of advertising dollars, ads and dollars that had been feeding the alt anything, alt left, alt right, it just did not matter. And so Wall Street Journal writes the article, they get everybody whipped up, and the advertisers leave the platform. They hold back their dollars. So their advertising dollars are going away, and Wall Street Journal and the legacy media is of the opinion that this bursts the bubble and causes the deflation of the alt media. Rather, takes away its operational base, its funding. And that's their goal there. Get rid of the funding. And so they try that, and that's what they end up with. But it's only temporary so far because YouTube still needs to stay in business. So YouTube still needs to have the advertisers. So it's not enough that the advertisers have decided to leave. YouTube has to say to itself, okay, well, how do we deal with getting them back? And once they're back, how do we keep them happy? And so on. So YouTube is developing a strategy around this. As everybody is. Those that are affected by it, those like myself that are marginally affected, not in funding, but in the nature of what's going on in terms of information available and so on. So YouTube's strategy is controlled by keywords. That's what they're attempting to implement right now. There may be another strategy behind that, though, in the sense another strategy to be rolled out later on. And that other strategy could involve, let's just say, a human intervention through software in at least getting approval. And this would be to get advertising. So this would be some form of partnership approach. Not only would you have to be authenticated and vetted as a human that they could reach through, and be taxed, basically, reach through your banks and so on, but you'd also have to be vetted as somebody who isn't going to use language they don't want you to use. And that's really what it comes down to. And so regardless of what kind of language it is, if it falls on, too far that way or too far this way, they don't want you using it. And so, except for when they want you to use it. Another thing entirely. So here we are in this situation. Now, the people that have been damaged by this, curiously, of course, are going to be all of the alt-right, who are the intended target of the Wall Street Journal. But also, we have this situation where we have that didn't work out at all. Man, it's just too wet in here to do that. Okay, so we'll try another tack. Okay, so the people who have been damaged here are curiously not merely the alt-right. It also includes the entire spectrum of the alt-sexuality or alt-gender, alt-identity thinking. Okay, so that entire genre, or not even a genre because there's multiple genres within it, that entire area of thought within YouTube has been slammed by these ad boycotts. And that was a developing problem before the Wall Street Journal decided to come in and muck about with things. This is simply because the tendency of the content was towards the extreme. And then within that area, they found themselves making some money off of their content. And so the only thing they could really grasp at that time was that it was the extremity of their content that was drawing the audience. And then they would produce something more extreme, and it was on a self-perpetuating cycle, drawing more audience and more money and so on, until basically they ended up, as all people on YouTube do, or anybody in the media this way, you end up consuming yourself and narrowing in on a focus that you think is what draws the audience. And so you become basically a caricature of yourself. And that works for a while, and then the audience falls off. So most of the YouTube and other alt media practitioners, many of them are just new enough they have yet to go through a single cycle. Now, a mental cycle can be thought of in the print world as 2 years. Basically, it's 26 months, but for our thinking, 2 years. And the 2-year framework means that every 2 years you can repeat the articles you had 2 years back, mostly, entirely, completely, because nobody's going to remember them that's still reading your magazine, but also in that 2-year period of time, you've cycled through the entire readership and basically replaced all of the readers as people are drawn to it and then drop off. This is also true now of all of the people that are on YouTube. Basically content creators that had been monetizing to create a living for themselves. And so in doing so, the new media, much of it had yet to reach a natural cycle, and then this came along. The natural cycle might be for, say, the gaming sites. You may find that the gaming sites have 1 million or 2 or 3 million subscribers, but they may cycle through all of those subscribers in a very short period of time, 18 months, 16 months, a year, who knows. And by cycling through, it would be someone that subscribed to their channel and then watched very diligently and then slowly over time became distracted, so to speak. Their attention wandered to other areas until they basically don't watch that channel anymore. That process on gaming channels might be in a range from 2 months, where you're bored with this guy after 2 months, but some of these other fellows have enough things of interest that you may hang around on their site for 6 months, a year. It's not, I have yet to determine that. I wasn't really interested in even going into that. It was just an ancillary part of this. So the numbers are not solid there, but the concept is. And it has to do basically with a boredom threshold. When do you get bored with a content producer's content? And at that stage, you go and find someone else. You piggyback and you go on. So I've talked to a number of advertisers, a number of people that work for advertisers, number of people that work in advertising for companies. So I've learned some things about the advertising world in the new media, and have discovered that, for instance, the many beauty channels have a very high cycle rate, that they tend to have very fiercely loyal followers, short duration though. They just don't stick with the channel all that long, but can be effectively advertised to while they're following the channel. Unfortunately for those channels though, their longevity is very, very short as well. And it seems to have a bell curve and peak and fall off within about 4 years. And it probably has to do with the changing nature of the individuals involved and the spread of interest you get as you grow older. And so in any event, these channels fade out fairly quickly. And those channels are also trapped in the extreme aspect of this. They get started in, there's some perks to doing the YouTube thing, and then in order to keep it continuing, they end up getting more and more extreme, and so attempt to draw more audience that way and grow it. And the metaphor, the model, doesn't really work for that particular niche market that way. So they've been hit hard by advertising ban. The alt-sexual media, alt-sexuality part of this, alt-gender part of it all has been hit hard. Alt-right has been hit hard. Everybody advertising on YouTube, or getting advertising revenue on YouTube, has been hit very hard, except our legacy media buddies of CNN and, MSNBC and all of these guys. Wall Street Journal, any of those kind of fellows. So those guys are still doing well with their corporate buddies. Now, the point of this particular talk was to bring up the idea and enlighten the thinking towards alternative means for using the same platform. Because fundamentally, here's the problem YouTube faces. They can't get rid of all the alts, all right? That's a huge chunk of their audience. So, for instance, if YouTube existed only with approved sources, I'd never go there. I'd never watch videos, wouldn't spend a moment of my time on it, nor, as a creator, would I put stuff there. I would put stuff over in a paid site even like Vimeo. That sort of thing. So YouTube has a very definitive limit here, and what they're going to run up against and what they have yet to grasp, and they're in the process of going through that grasping and understanding and having it become internalized in the noggins of the people that are currently the buttheads and dicks in charge, is that it is the alts that are the counterculture, that are the drawing source, that are the emotional media. It is not legacy. So, for instance, let us look at it in another way. Should YouTube decide to go over to entirely approved legacy media sources for news and everything, they're basically signing their own death knell or death warrant as a corporation, because we can see that CNN, MSNBC, broadcast media, Wall Street Journal, all these things are dying, had been dying hugely, and are not growing a new audience. So they're and are not attractive to any of the generations other than those that were raised on them. So they've got a real issue there. They need the alt media. They need it to continue. They need it to be healthy in order to continue to bring in those people that could be drawn there. So YouTube's approach at this point is going to be as follows. My prediction: they'll draw a Berlin Wall between two halves. They'll have the alt over on one side, and they'll have the approved on the other. And they will still attempt to try and drive their alt traffic this way, and they, I think, will become, they will be sanguine about the generation and death of the alt side. In other words, the alt media, not receiving dollars as the legacy media does, will necessarily generate and die lots and lots and lots of creators that will come on in and not be able to make it go. They won't be able to come up with a metaphor or some theme that allows them to make it without the advertising revenue coming in. So some will. Now, in doing so, in doing this wall here, as well as hurting the alt-right, alt-political, let's call them that, and the alt-sexual gender, alt-sex-gen, and not only hurting those guys, they've also damaged all of the body people, male or female, bodybuilders or beauty channels, all right? So they've damaged those guys. There's a lot of them. There's a surprising number of those guys. They've also damaged all the health channels. That actually was part of their goal. And they've damaged all of the gaming channels. And they've also, they want to take out some of the stunts as well. That's part of the things they're trying to get rid of. Anyway, so they've got this list, and they've kind of got it segregated this way. They don't care so much about these guys, really. Oh, they just want them controlled. They don't want them gone, and they're quite happy to support them. These guys, they want gone, the alt-politicals, and the alt-sex-gen, they want under tight control. And they're going to try and use them. This is the way that they're thinking. That is to say, the powers that be. And so, if you happen to be, as I am, smack into this range right here, or I'm even worse, because I'm like seriously woo-woo here. So we'll put woo-woo way down. All right? And so under those circumstances, since I'm down here, and they're really after us, I knew what I was getting into, right? I mean, it was like part of the proposition. I was an adult when I went in and did this. Oh, some of the shit I'm saying here might get me killed. Who knows, you know? These people are wacko. They're bad shit. They're crazy. They don't behave like normal, regular humans. Many of the people at the top are pedophiles. Many of them are being blackmailed. Probably most of them are constantly stoned on all kinds of bizarre drugs we've never even heard of. And that's our world. That's the world. Welcome to our world, okay? And so this is the world we live in. So, if you're up in any of this area here, I feel bad for you guys. I feel bad for you. You're just collateral damage. You know, they wanted to control us. If you're down here in the alt-sex-gen stuff, there's nothing I can really recommend for you because it's been seriously targeted. If you've been making money that way, maybe you can go back to it if you get extremely academic and that sort of thing. You'll still have the audience to some extent, and they might allow ad revenue to come back in, but it seems a little dodgy at this point. Up in this area here, there's some things you can do. You have to recognize that what they're doing is they're controlling you through the advertising. Advertising dollars. And in doing that, if you want to control, if you want to take back your control of your own situation, then you need to sever that bond to the advertising dollars and just write it off and figure some other way of making money. So you can go to pay-per-view, where you have enough of a loyal audience that you're able to set up a paywall and people pay a couple of bucks a month to see, or week, or whatever it is, to see your videos, maybe on an individual basis, and it's pennies, who knows. The micro payments idea is really good, where you hook up with Bitcoin and that kind of thing, and then send out a password, and your videos are up for a short period of time, and then they drop off. And you can manage all of that on your own PC. There's also the idea of sales directly, in the sense of selling, like Philip DeFranco sells t-shirts, so you can sell stuff directly. Once you get a loyal audience, they will send you in dollars by buying your stuff directly, and then you're no longer dependent on the advertising revenue. Beyond the pay-per-view, the micropayments, and direct sales, you can also work on the idea of independent advertising, okay? Independent advertising. Well, independent advertising, it's down there. Because here's the idea on that. That's the idea that, okay, so let's take the example of one of these fashionistas. Frequently they get hooked on this whole YouTube thing because they go out and they do something, or they see someone else doing it, and then the clothing manufacturers mail them a bunch of crap, right? And so they do a try-on, or whatever it is they call them, a modeling, where they model the clothes that have been sent to them free by these people, and they're just thrilled. They got all this free stash here, free clothing, and this is just cool as hell. Can't beat this. And then they're hooked. You know, it's like drug dealers. Hey, here, you want a little bit of crack? It's good for you. You know, wake you up in the morning. Anyway, so the fashionistas are in that situation where they can actually do this for as long as period of time as they're into that particular mindset, and they're able to develop that audience. If they have the personality that draws the audience, they can do direct sales or of independent advertising for the people that provide them with the products. That is to say, they can make infomercials, basically, and so make revenue that way, where the advertisers pay you directly for a product that you produce, right? And so one thing that might really shake up the world would be if a lot of the YouTubers that fall into these categories right here, that had skills, were to go out and independently make spec advertising for companies they happen to like. Not for showing necessarily, maybe there'd be competitions and stuff, I don't know, but also to show the companies. If the companies like it, maybe they would sponsor the ad. You know, it costs you a little bit of time and effort and ingenuity to put together something that you think would help sell their product or get their message across, and so on, to the point where those people are likely to give you money and support your efforts in the future. So talent is usually supported in history by a number of different approaches. Talent usually ends up finding its way. So if you're good at this kind of thing, that's a really good approach. So there are other options than their advertising dollars. And it you know, there's a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this. It means working. You got to get off your butt. You got to do stuff. You got to, you know, set up the sales connections to the corporations, all this kind of stuff. All these things you can learn. None of this is beyond you. You figured out how to use all this technology and make these videos. So getting the things funded is within your capability. This is something that is not necessarily easy. It'll be challenging, but when you're done, you'll own that. And you won't be, you know, being strangled by your short hairs when the advertisers cough. So, anyway, so that's the rant of the day. A little bit of a whiteboard thing. Remember, there are other options to YouTube's advertising in order to make money, and you still use YouTube. Now, here's the thing about YouTube. They need you. They need that audience. You'll note that a lot of the other crap they've got out there does not sustain a long-term relationship with an audience. The audiences come and go and flow through. And that's fine insofar as YouTube is concerned, because they can report millions of people are watching this kind of video and millions of people are watching that kind of video. From an advertiser's viewpoint, though, most of those millions of people are a waste, because most of those people are not going to have any kind of a brand identification or brand loyalty that piggybacks off of that video or that genre into their product. Unlike the alts, all right? All of them. I mean, look, Alex Jones makes enough money to support a crew doing that work there with his sales, with direct sales. So there's your role model. There's somebody that has gotten out and invented a way to get it done and has achieved it and gotten it done. So guys, it's not that difficult to do. And as I say, it cuts the cord on advertising. Now, YouTube admittedly doesn't need me, all right? Doesn't need any of us. At the moment, it's getting 400 hours of programming videos being uploaded every damn minute. So it does not give a rat's ass about any individual given or creator at all, because we're replaceable. We're self-replacing. As soon as I stop making videos, whatever little time slice I'm allotted by universe is taken over by somebody else with their own ideas, and off they go. So YouTube doesn't care about us on an individual basis at that level. But it does care enough, even though it's a failing company, never made a dime in profit, that sort of thing, is supported by Google, its parent. It does care enough to form and spend millions of dollars on all these creator promotion things, their idea, their version of the Oscars, their version of all these creator schools, all these things, and the staff devoted to corralling, and that's really what it is. That's the whole point. It's not to pump up the creators, it's not to pump up the YouTube brand, because they don't have to do that. The technology is so nascent, and there's so many trillions of people on the planet, billions, that have yet to even see YouTube, that growth is not an issue for them at this stage. But what is an issue is controlling the creators. So they've corralled them. They're attempting to corral them with all these free gifts, sucking you in, saying, hey, look, you get a silver whoozy, was it? Because you've got 100,000 subscribers. And oh, by the way, we want to invite you over here to this creators workshop where we'll teach you how to do shit. And basically, they're teaching you how to do stuff their way and not do those things they don't want you to do. And so it's a control mechanism. And it's working, and it works really well. So, there's no reason for them to stop that. And like I say, they don't need any individual or even genre of creators, except that they really do. And this is what they're in the process of discovering right at the moment. And it'll take them some months to discover this, okay? They're going to have to take a couple of big hits before this really gels out. And I would not look for the advertiser issue to be resolved for 18 or 20 months, minimum. It'll be up and down like currencies fluctuating over that period of time as they go through this process of discovering what YouTube actually is. Now, I've done a lot of analysis on YouTube because I had to go through and do that in order to be effective in the process of going through and discovering what is or discovering some of its underlying operating principles. And it's going to end up discovering who and what its audience really is. That discovery is going to change how YouTube does things. I have some vague hints about some things that YouTube probably doesn't even know about itself, because I had to run my spiders against the YouTube comments and then had to figure out how to encode context and other components that I usually seek out in the text. So I learned some things about YouTube and its audience. It was such learning that led me to my projection that, oh, well, based on YouTube alone, Trump's going to win, and he's going to win in a landslide. This was back last year, obviously. And it was during the June, July, and August period that I got really intense on YouTube and ran all these things through. And it was at that point, actually, that I happened to catch in real time some of the algorithm changes, just in the way my data capture was working, and the fact that I was doing analysis onto YouTube in order to fold it in as yet another social media being folded into our process. So my supposition about YouTube's understanding is that they have a view of their own business that's woefully inadequate to the reality of their business, and they're going to run into a big wall if they proceed along a certain path, because that will kill their business, basically, in terms of the growth and so on, and we'll all migrate off somewhere else. That's not the case at the moment. Everything in terms of my data sets shows that we're in for a very rough couple of years with the media wars going on, but during that period of time, it will be possible for people with a plan to implement that plan and, plan the work the plan, and succeed. So basically, it's kind of like, well,